It is Saturday morning, and your entire family is standing around the cage arguing about the exact same thing you have been arguing about for months. Is Kiwi a boy or a girl? Your daughter insists it is a girl because of the way she tilts her head. Your husband swears it is a male because it screams the loudest every single morning at 6 a.m. You have scrolled through 40 different comment sections at 2 in the morning, and every single person online swears a different tell. The size of the beak, the shape of the skull, how wide the feet are, how aggressive the bird acts toward strangers. None of it lines up, and honestly, none of it is actually true. What if I told you that for a huge number of pet parrots, there really is one very specific spot on their body that tells you their exact gender in about 10 seconds? No blood draw, no lab, no 2-week wait, no $200 vet bill. And what if I also told you that most parrot owners are staring directly at that spot every single day of their lives and still getting it completely wrong? Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Mara Calloway, your neighborhood avian veterinarian, and welcome back to the channel. Gender confusion is one of the single most common questions I get asked in my exam room, right behind nutrition and feather health. Owners bring their bird in for a wellness check, and almost every time at some point in the appointment, they lean in and whisper, "So is it actually a boy or a girl?" Today, we are doing a full master class on parrot gender identification. I am going to show you exactly where to look, on which species this trick actually works, why it works biologically, and just as important, I am going to be completely honest with you about the species where this trick will fail you every single time and what to do instead. Grab a notebook if you want, because by the end of this video, you are going to know more about avian gender identification than most first-time bird owners will ever learn in their entire lives. Let us start with the biggest myth in the entire hobby, the behavior myth. So many owners believe that male parrots are naturally louder, more aggressive, and more dominant, while female parrots are supposedly quieter and sweeter. I need you to unlearn this right now. Personality and hormonal aggression in parrots has almost nothing reliably to do with gender. I have treated screaming territorial hens who ruled their entire household with an iron beak, and I have treated soft-spoken cuddly males who would not hurt a fly. Behavior is shaped by hormones, breeding season, individual temperament, and how the bird was raised, not by whether it is genetically male or female. If you have been trying to guess your bird's gender based on how bossy it acts, you have been reading the wrong signal your entire time as an owner. I actually had a client come into my clinic a few years ago who was absolutely convinced her Quaker parrot was male, purely because he was the loudest, boldest bird in the entire household, always climbing to the top of the cage and puffing up at anyone who walked past. She was genuinely stunned when a simple DNA test came back showing she had owned a female this entire time. Dominant, loud, and confident are personality traits, not gender markers, and I see this exact mix-up in my exam room on a regular basis. So if behavior is not the answer, what actually is? This is where real avian biology comes in, and here is the concept that changes everything. Not all parrots are built the same when it comes to gender. Some species are what we call sexually dimorphic, which simply means the male and the female look visibly different from each other, almost like they are wearing different uniforms. Other species are monomorphic, meaning the male and the female look completely identical on the outside, down to the exact same feather color, the exact same size, and the exact same shape. This single biological fact is the real reason the internet is so confused about parrot gender. People are trying to apply one universal trick across every single species, when the truth is the trick only works if your bird species actually shows a visible difference in the first place. Let us start with the species where the one-spot trick genuinely works, and it works beautifully. If you own a budgie, sometimes called a parakeet, look directly above the beak, right where the nostrils are. That small fleshy patch of skin is called the cirri. This is your one spot. In a healthy adult male budgie, the cirri is smooth and it is colored a solid blue or purple. In some color mutations like pied, lutino, or pink varieties, it can shift toward a light pink or a purplish pink, but it stays smooth and even in texture. In a healthy adult female budgie, the cirri is a completely different story. It is usually tan, brown, or a pale beige color, and when she is in breeding condition, it can actually thicken and develop a slightly crusty, almost sandpaper-like texture. That crusty brown texture is one of the clearest, most reliable gender markers in the entire parrot world, and you can genuinely check it in about 10 seconds by just looking at your bird's face in good lighting. There is one important timing rule here, though. Young budgies under about 3 to 4 months old have not matured hormonally yet, so both males and females often show a similar pinkish or purplish cere at that baby stage. If you try to check a very young bird, you might get a false read. Wait until your budgie is closer to 4 to 6 months old, and the true adult cere color will settle in and stay consistent for the rest of its life. One quick vet note here. If your female budgie's cere suddenly becomes extremely thick, crusty, or brown almost overnight outside of a normal breeding cycle, that is worth a veterinary check rather than just a gender confirmation, since certain reproductive conditions in hen budgies can also cause rapid cere changes. It is a small detail, but it is exactly the kind of thing an avian vet would want to know about at your bird's next visit. Now let us talk about one of the most dramatic examples of visible gender difference in the entire bird world, the Eclectus parrot. If you have ever seen a photo of an Eclectus and thought there is no way those are the same species, you were absolutely right to be shocked. Male Eclectus parrots are a brilliant, almost emerald green from head to tail. Female Eclectus parrots are the complete opposite, a deep, striking red body with a purple or dark blue chest and belly. For decades, ornithologists actually believed the red birds and the green birds were two entirely separate species because the difference is that extreme. Here is the fascinating biological reason behind it. Eclectus parrots nest inside deep tree hollows in the rainforest canopy, and the females spend the vast majority of their lives guarding that nesting cavity, sometimes staying inside it for months at a time, defending it from other females competing for the same limited hollow. Her bold red and purple coloring is thought to help her stand out and assert dominance while guarding that valuable nest site from the inside. The males, on the other hand, need to blend into the green canopy while flying long distances searching for food to bring back to her and the chicks. Their green coloring works as natural camouflage while foraging. So with Eclectus parrots, you do not need 10 seconds and you do not need a trained eye. If your bird is green, you have a male. If your bird is red and purple, you have a female. It really is that visually obvious once you know what you are looking at, and it remains one of the very few parrot species where a brand new owner could correctly guess gender from across the room on day one. If you own an Indian ringneck parakeet, the one-spot trick requires a little bit of patience, but it is still remarkably reliable. Look at the neck, right around where the throat meets the chest. Mature male Indian ringnecks develop a distinct ring around their neck, usually black at the front, fading into a rosy pink band along the back and sides. This is exactly where the species gets its name. Female Indian ringnecks never develop this neck ring at all. Their neck stays a clean, solid, unmarked color that matches the rest of their body. The catch here is timing. This neck ring does not appear overnight. It typically develops gradually as the bird matures, usually becoming clearly visible somewhere between 2 and 3 years of age. So if you have a young Indian ringneck under 2 years old with no ring yet, that does not automatically mean you have a female. It might simply mean your male has not finished maturing. Patience is the key with this particular species. For cockatiel owners, there is a genuinely clever trick, but it depends on which color variety your bird is. In normal gray cockatiels, check the underside of the tail feathers and the wing feathers. Juvenile cockatiels of both genders are born with a pattern of horizontal yellow barring under the tail feathers and small yellow spots under the wing feathers. Here is where it gets interesting. After the first juvenile molt, which usually happens around 6 to 9 months of age, males typically lose this barring completely and their tail feathers underneath turn a solid, unmarked gray. Females, on the other hand, usually keep that barred pattern and the wing spots for their entire lives. So if you flip your adult gray cockatiel gently and check underneath the tail, solid gray with no barring generally points to a male, while retained yellow barring generally points to a female. I do need to add an important caveat here. This particular trick only works reliably on normal gray coloring and a handful of similar mutations. Certain color mutations like pearl or lutino cockatiels retain juvenile style markings regardless of gender, which makes this specific visual method unreliable for those particular color varieties. Now for cockatoo owners, there is a subtler but fascinating clue hiding in plain sight: the eyes. In many cockatoo species, adult males typically develop a very dark brown to almost black iris, the colored ring around the pupil. Adult females in many of these same species often develop a lighter reddish brown or a warm mahogany colored iris. The tricky part with this one is that it takes time to show up clearly, usually becoming more distinguishable somewhere around 1 to 2 years of age, and you genuinely need to look closely in bright natural light to catch the difference, since it is far more subtle than something like the Eclectus color difference or the budgie series. It is also worth knowing that this eye-based trick is considered a helpful clue rather than an absolute guarantee in every single cockatoo species. So if you are planning to breed rather than simply satisfy your own curiosity, pairing this observation with a DNA test is always the safer bet. Now here comes the part of this video where I have to be completely honest with you, even though it is not the flashy answer you might have been hoping for. If you own an African gray, most Amazon parrots, most macaws, or most conures, there is no reliable spot anywhere on their body that will tell you their gender just by looking. These species are monomorphic, meaning the male and the female were built by evolution to look identical. The biological reason actually makes a lot of sense once you understand their parenting style. Unlike Eclectus parrots, where the female stays hidden in a nest cavity for months, species like African greys and macaws typically share nesting and chick rearing duties fairly equally between both parents. Because neither parent needs to stand out, hide, or attract a mate through visual signaling in the same dramatic way, evolution never gave these species a built-in visual gender tag. This means if you are told by anyone that you can tell an African gray's gender by the shape of its head, the width of its feet, or the color of its eye ring at any age, that person is simply guessing, and there is a very real chance they are wrong. So what do you actually do if your bird belongs to one of these monomorphic species? And this list is longer than most owners realize. It includes African greys, most Amazon parrots, most macaws, most conures, Quaker parakeets, and most lovebird species as well. There are exactly 2 scientifically reliable methods, and I want to walk you through both honestly. The first is DNA sexing, which is by far the easiest and safest option available to bird owners today. A single drop of blood, usually collected from a tiny clip on one toenail, or a few plucked feathers with the follicle still attached, get sent to a specialized avian genetics lab. The lab examines the bird's sex chromosomes directly, since birds actually carry a completely different chromosome system than mammals do, and the results come back with essentially total accuracy, usually within about 1 to 2 weeks. Pricing varies by lab and region, but a standard DNA sexing test for a pet bird typically falls somewhere in a modest, affordable range, often less than a routine vet office visit itself. Many avian veterinary clinics offer this service directly, and there are also mail-in DNA testing kits made specifically for pet birds that you can order and use at home before mailing the sample to the lab yourself. The second method is called surgical or endoscopic sexing, where a veterinarian places the bird under general anesthesia and uses a tiny camera called an endoscope to directly visualize the internal reproductive organs. This method was actually the primary way breeders determined gender before DNA testing became affordable and widely available, and while it is still used today, particularly by breeding operations that want to simultaneously check for other internal health markers, it is far more invasive than a simple DNA test, and because it requires anesthesia, it does carry more inherent risk. For the average pet owner simply wanting to know their bird's gender, DNA testing is almost always the better, safer, and more practical choice. I do want to give you an important safety warning here, because this comes up constantly in my clinic. Please do not attempt to determine your bird's gender by physically examining or probing the vent area yourself at home. I know there are videos online showing owners spreading the vent feathers and trying to visually inspect internal anatomy without any veterinary training. This is genuinely risky. It can cause significant stress to the bird. It can lead to accidental injury if the bird struggles, and honestly, without proper training, most owners cannot interpret what they are even looking at with any real accuracy anyway. If you want a truly hands-on physical method, DNA testing through a simple blood or feather sample is dramatically safer, more accurate, and far less stressful for your bird than any form of home vent inspection. Let us bring this all together into one simple action plan you can actually use today. Step 1. Identify your bird's exact species because the entire method depends completely on this. Step 2. If you own a budgie, check the cirri above the beak for blue or purple versus tan or crusty brown. If you own an Eclectus, simply look at the overall body color, green versus red and purple. If you own an Indian ringneck, check for that developing neck ring, keeping in mind it may take up to 3 years to appear. If you own a gray cockatiel, gently check underneath the tail feathers for barring versus solid gray after the first molt. If you own a cockatoo, look closely at iris color once your bird passes the 1-year mark. Step 3, and this is the most important step of all. If you own an African gray, an Amazon, a macaw, a conure, or really any species where you are not 100% certain there is a visible difference, do not guess and do not trust internet folklore. Book a simple DNA test through your avian veterinarian or a mail-in testing kit. It is affordable, it is safe, and it gives you a definitive answer instead of a lifetime of family arguments over the cage. At the end of the day, whether your parrot turns out to be a he or a she does not change how much personality, intelligence, and love lives inside that little body. But knowing for certain does matter, for naming, for understanding certain hormonal behaviors during breeding season, and honestly, just for finally settling the debate at your dinner table. So tell me down in the comments, what species of parrot do you have, and have you actually confirmed its gender yet, or are you still guessing? I would genuinely love to know which method you end up trying. If this masterclass finally answered a question you have been wondering about for months, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps this kind of honest, science-based bird care reach more owners who need it. Subscribe so you never miss the next deep dive into keeping your feathered friend happy and healthy. Give your parrot a gentle head scratch from me tonight. Keep observing them closely, and I will see you in the next video.